I don't know if it's just me, but about 1 out of every 4 times I go to the grocery store, it's just for milk. So I walk in without a cart or a basket because I'm only grabbing one thing. But somehow I leave carrying milk, chips, eggs, a Red Bull, and whatever else I can fit in my hands. And after doing this enough times, I started wondering, why is milk almost always in the back of the store? Is it really placed there to make us spend more? Or is there another reason? After doing some research, I found out the answer is actually a little bit of both. You see, where everything is placed can affect what you notice, what you walk past, and sometimes what you end up buying. And apparently, this doesn't just happen to me. One study followed 441 households and found that unplanned purchases happened on almost 40% of grocery trips. That's about 2 out of 5 households. And on those trips, they added an average of 3 extra items. So this happens often enough to make a real difference. But the first thing I found out is that milk being in the back isn't only about making you walk past snacks. In fact, that might not even be the main reason. There's a much more practical explanation. Milk has to stay cold, and most grocery stores receive their dairy products at the back. That's where the loading docks, refrigerated storage rooms, and restocking areas are. Keeping the milk cases nearby means employees can unload and restock it more efficiently, while spending less time moving through warmer parts of the store. Refrigerated departments also require special equipment, drainage, electrical systems, and cooling pipes. Grouping that equipment near the outer walls can make the entire refrigeration system easier and less expensive to operate. So I'm not saying grocery stores are sitting there like evil masterminds plotting against people who just want a gallon of milk. There are legitimate reasons for putting it back there, but at the same time, stores definitely understand what happens when you have to walk through the building, because the longer you're inside, the more chances they have to get your attention. Milk is kind of a perfect item for this. Like, it's not exciting. Nobody wakes up and says, "You know what sounds fun today? A trip to the store for some 2%." You just buy milk because you need it. So if it were right by the entrance, you could walk in, grab it, pay, and leave. That would be great for you. But for the store, that's one of the shortest shopping trips possible. Instead, milk is usually deeper inside the building, and now your quick little milk trip becomes a journey. You pass cereal, snacks, drinks, frozen foods, plus little sale signs, and suddenly your brain starts doing that thing where it pretends everything is reasonable. Well, if I'm getting milk, I might as well get cereal. Then, if I'm getting cereal, I might as well get snacks. And somehow you have enough loot to survive an apocalypse. The store doesn't need every person to buy a full cart. It just needs some people to buy a few extra items. One extra drink, one extra snack, one extra thing that wasn't on their mind when they walked in. Because when thousands of people do that every week, those little extras become real money. According to FMI, the average supermarket generated about $711,806 in sales every week in 2024. But the average net profit margin for food retailers was only 1.7%. So grocery stores do a massive amount of business, but they only keep a small percentage of those sales as profit. That makes every extra item in your cart more important than it might seem. And this is why grocery store layout matters so much. According to FMI, the average supermarket carried 31,795 different items in 2024. That is a crazy number, more than 31,000 items. I can barely decide what I want for dinner. So when you walk into a store with that many options, the store has to decide what gets placed in front of you. Because if you don't notice something, you probably won't buy it. But if it gets put directly in your path, now it has a gambling chance. That's why a lot of stores put produce near the front. Fruits and vegetables next to flowers and bright colors. It makes the store feel fresh the second you walk in. Right after you almost walk straight into those sliding doors that takes a light year to open. But it might even make you feel like you're starting the trip by making healthy decisions. Which is kind of funny, because 5 minutes later, you might be buying cookies. But at least the trip started with broccoli. And I'm not saying produce is at the front only to manipulate you. It looks good, it smells fresh, and it can make the store feel cleaner and more inviting. But that's exactly why it works. It puts you in shopping mode. Then you start moving through the store, and you see the end caps. Those are the displays at the ends of the aisles. I don't know about you, but end caps always make me feel like I'm supposed to look at them. It's like the store is saying, "Hey, this is important." But not everything on an end cap is automatically the best deal. Sometimes it is. Other times it's there because the store or the brand wants that product somewhere people will notice it. And once again, that's the game. Attention. The entire store is fighting for your attention. And end caps can make a surprisingly large difference. One study compared products displayed inside normal aisles with products placed at the ends of aisles. Moving carbonated drinks to an aisle end was associated with a 51.7% increase in sales volume. For coffee, the increase was 73.5%. The product didn't change, the location did. Then there's shelf placement. This is one of those things that sounds boring until you realize how much it affects what you buy. The products directly in front of you usually have an advantage because most people aren't bending down and comparing every option like they're investigating a crime scene. Most people grab what's easy. And honestly, I get it. I'm not trying to spend 10 minutes in the cracker aisle doing research. I just want the crackers, but the store knows that. So the easiest product to grab isn't always the cheapest one. Sometimes the better deal is lower on the shelf, sometimes it's higher. But the product that's easiest to see and reach has a better chance of ending up in your cart. Researchers have tested this inside actual stores. In one experiment involving potato chips, placement on the middle shelf was associated with the highest percentage of purchases compared with the high and low shelves. And some manufacturers even pay retailers what are known as slotting allowances for access to shelf space. So the competition for where a product appears is very real. And that's the part that makes grocery shopping kind of weird. You feel like you're making every decision by yourself, and technically you are. Nobody is forcing you to buy chips. Nobody is tackling you in aisle 5 and making you grab frozen waffles. But the store is deciding what gets placed in front of you, what feels convenient, what looks like a deal, and what you walk past when you're already in buying mode. By the time you finally get to the milk, you've already had a bunch of chances to spend more. But even then, the store isn't done, because now you still have to make it to checkout, and checkout has its own strategy. Candy, gum, drinks, small snacks, little things that don't feel expensive enough to think about. That's what makes them dangerous. Nobody stands in line and performs a full financial analysis on a pack of gum. You just throw it in. At that point, you're done shopping, you're waiting, you might be a little tired, and the store gives you one last chance to spend a few more dollars. So when people ask, why is milk in the back? The simple answer is that it makes sense for refrigeration, deliveries, and restocking. The business advantage is that it gives the store a reason to move you around the building. And once you're moving through the building, every aisle, shelf, sign, and display gets a chance to influence what you buy. That's the bigger lesson here. A grocery store doesn't just sell food, it designs the path around the food. It thinks about where your attention goes, what you see first, what you pass on the way to what you actually came for, and what feels easy to grab without thinking too hard. And that idea can apply to almost any business. If you sell something, it's not only about having a good product, it's also about the path people take to find it, what they notice first, what else they see along the way, and how easy you make it for them to take the next step. So the next time you walk into a store for milk, I'm not saying you need to sprint to the back with tunnel vision, but maybe just notice the path. Notice what catches your attention. Notice what you almost grab without thinking, because the milk might be in the back. But the real money is everything you pass on the way there. And honestly, that's why I'm just grabbing one thing might be one of the most expensive lies we tell ourselves.